With official government sanctioned and relentless persecution and no legal means of protection, many Chinese turn to illegal channels, the Tongs, for aid and comfort. Now, the Tongs, Tong is actually a Chinese word meaning halls. Well, they originate in the 18th century in Taiwan and Fujian, but they're called triads in China, and they are a type of political force that wishes to unseat the Qing dynasty, the Manchus. Now, to the triads, the Manchus are unable to deal with the imperialist European powers and cannot protect China. Now, the first members of these Tongs, or triads, are bound together by religious oaths and rituals. Well, they're mostly poor folk and sailors. But after a while, the triads begin to attract more members from the peasant and middle classes. Now, this alternative form of organizational protection is not unusual in China, where powerful family dynasties controlled entire towns and villages, controlled them for centuries. Now, at first, the Tongs, which appear in New York City in the early 1880s, protect their members' jobs and business interests. But in a short time, they evolve into a criminal organization, basically, controlling thugs who control the drug trade, prostitution, gambling, and loan sharking via extortion and physical violence. Now, each Tong, each triad, has its own sphere, basically exclusive rights to criminal operations. And they become very clever craftsmen of organized vice. The Tongs thrive on the permanent tensions in Chinatown and the lack of legal prospects and resources for their own people in the United States. The various Tong groups struggle for supremacy and basically vie for the same people, places, and things. And, well, sadly settle their conflict by, bloody resolution, fighting and killing each other openly in the streets. The Tong Wars, which were, both the stuff of legend and the stuff of headlines, help to shift American perspective and help to create this yellow peril viewpoint, the fear of the Mongolian hordes invading the U.S. of A. The Tong Wars did not actually stop until the 1930s, when their leaders were threatened with or actually deported. Now, the most famous or infamous of New York's Chinatown Tong leaders was a gentleman named Mock Duck, who reigned supreme with his secret society, the Hip Sing Tong. Their headquarters was housed at 16 Pell Street. Now, as a child, Mock Duck watched a Tong war raging in the street from the balcony of his family's apartment in San Francisco. Now, as the boy analyzed the strategies of the Tong warriors, fighting below, he realized what he wanted to be when he grew up: the emperor of all the Tongs. And within 10 years, he'd achieved his goal. Now, Mock Duck, upon his arrival from San Francisco into New York City, would always tell the powerful Anlong Tong leader, whose name was Tom Lee, who happened to be the so-called mayor of Chinatown. Well, Mock Duck tells Tom Lee that, "Mr. Lee, you are finished. I am the mayor of Chinatown now." Now, these words would often be greeted by hysterical laughter from the people on the street. Now, let me talk a little bit about Tom Lee. Well, he begins his life as Wang Ah-ling, and he arrives in New York circa 1879, and did well in the tea and silk business, then began manufacturing cigars. Lee wines and dines Tammany Hall politicians who crown him the leader of Chinatown. Now, the surname Lee was the largest in the Chinatown community. And Tom opens a family association, his own private savings and loan bank, gobbling up many restaurants, groceries, and, well, considerable real estate along the way. Now, despite Tom's Lee economic and political power, not to mention his muscle, and despite the ridicule, Mock Duck knows deep in his heart that he will soon become the most feared Tong leader of them all. Duck has a unique gun shooting style, even though he's actually an extremely bad shot. Duck would crouch in the middle of Mott Street, close his eyes, and blaze away, full circle, with his two huge revolvers. Amazingly, in all his many street battles, Mock Duck was injured only once. When on November 4th, 1904, three of the An Ling Tong, Mr. Lee's boys, suddenly appear as Duck stepped out of his home on Pell Street. Now, in imitation of Mock Duck's shooting style, the An Lung Tong hunkered down, shut their eyes, and began blazing away. When the smoke cleared, Mock Duck had been struck by a single bullet, a bullet in the hip. Now, the police chased the assassins, but caught only one of these Tong gunmen. The police formed a protective wall around the would-be assassin in order to move him through the streets of Chinatown. Now, surrounded by angry, hip-sing Tong seeking revenge, they moved slowly to Chatham Square, where a police wagon waited to carry the An Lung Tong man to jail. Now, Mock Duck recovers to fight another day. He never fails, despite his exalted position, to lead his troops into a street fight as he gains territory and power. Duck moves his Tong away from the traditional roles as assassins, and into opium peddling, prostitution, and gambling, amassing a huge personal fortune. The other Tongs in Chinatown try once again to stop him. Three of the best hatchet men are sent after Mock Duck. They cornered him in an alley, but their hatchets had no effect on Duck. Drawing his own hatchet, Duck hacks two of the three killers to death. Then the third one flees, who, of course, spreads the word that Mock Duck is indestructible and immortal. Mock Duck actually dies an old, much feared, and much respected leader, secure in the knowledge that he was the greatest Tong man who had ever lived. Now, his funeral was massive and impressive, with incense burning, endlessly burning, to symbolically clear the area of evil spirits. There was lots of music, lots of flowers, lots of banners, lanterns, and firecrackers. The Tong Wars, which last from 1880s to the 1930s, combined with the American people's anxiety over the Boxer Rebellion in 1910, would give rise to another wave of yellow peril fever. Now, from this fever, Chinese hordes, the idea is that the Chinese hordes would overwhelm the world by their sheer numbers in manpower. A sensational adventure fiction develops from this yellow peril fear. Fiction in pulp magazines, comic books, and also feature films. The Oriental Megalomaniac, Fu Manchu, for example, an evil scientific genius and a leader of a secret Chinese organization bent on world domination. Fu Manchu and these Oriental evil villains just like him spring from this second massive wave of racist yellow peril. Writers like Sax Rohmer and Matthew Phillips Scheel sell millions of magazines and books. They mix Nietzschean and Tolstoyan theories of history with poetic narrative prose. These evil masterminds of fiction spring directly from the efficient and ruthless Tong leaders like Mock Duck. All right, with that.